Yo, what's up guys, Sensus here, and today we'll be doing an updated combat rogue guide. I noticed that the last one I made is a little bit outdated, so I thought I'd go ahead and make a whole new one. So in this video we'll be going over talent choices, glyph choices, stat priorities, openers, burst rotations, and just some basic information that everybody should know about the spec. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Okay, starting off with talents, your basic setup should be Subterfuge, Combat Readiness, Elusiveness, Shadow Step or Burst of Speed, Internal Bleeding, Mark for Death, and Shadow Reflection. Now personally, I prefer running with Burst of Speed whenever I'm doing BGs, RBGs, 2v2 arenas for the most part, but when it comes to 3v3 arenas, I feel that Shadow Step is more powerful just because it allows you to pull off stuff that you wouldn't otherwise be able to pull off with Burst of Speed, such as Shadow Step kicks or Shadow Step stuns. Either way, both talents are viable to use in threes, but overall I feel that Shadow Step has more utility use. And of course, if you end up queuing into a caster comp such as God comp, you want to switch out Combat Readiness for Nerve Strike. Now moving on to glyphs, your basic cookie cutter glyph setup for combat spec is the Glyph of Energy, the Glyph of Disappearance, and the Glyph of Blind. Now you can switch some of these glyphs around depending on the comp you're playing. So for example, if you're playing RMD or a comp that doesn't have a lot of dots going out, you can switch out the Glyph of Blind for the Glyph of Garrote or the Glyph of Cheap Shot. Alright, now let's talk a little bit about how some of the abilities that you get as combat spec work, starting with the passive Bandit's Guile. Now what it does is after every 4 Sinister Strikes, it'll give you a 15-second buff called Insight. So after 4 you'll get Shallow Insight, which will increase all your damage done by 10%. Then after 8 you'll get Moderate Insight, which will increase all your damage done by 20%. And then after 12 you'll get Deep Insight, which will increase all your damage done by 50%. And this is all thanks to Empowered Bandit's Guile. And I think it goes without saying, the optimal time to use Killing Spree is alongside your Deep Insight buff. Next up we have the passive Combat Potency, and this is exactly why you want to use 2 swords or 2 fist weapons whenever you play combat, because slower weapons, meaning swords or fist weapons as opposed to daggers, have a higher chance of generating 15 energy whenever they hit your target. Next up we have the passive Ruthlessness, and what this does, for every combo point you spend on Eviscerate, it'll decrease the cooldown on Adrenalin Rush, Killing Spree, and Sprint by 2 seconds. And for each combo point you spend on Eviscerate, you'll have a 20% chance to gain 25 energy. So if you have 5 combo points on your target and you use Eviscerate, you'll have a 100% chance to generate 25 energy. Okay, next up we have Revealing Strike. Now this ability you want to keep up on your target 24/7 just because of what it does. Now what it does is it will increase all your finishers on that target by 35% and gives your Sinister Strikes a 25% chance to generate an extra combo point. Now let's talk a little bit about the burst abilities that come with combat spec. Now unlike Subtlety and Assassination, combat spec has 2 burst abilities, Adrenalin Rush and Killing Spree. Now Adrenalin Rush increases your energy regen by 100%, your attack speed by 20%, and decreases the GCD on energy consuming abilities such as Sinister Strike, Revealing Strike, and Eviscerate. And finally we have the main burst ability for combat spec, Killing Spree, and what it does is it will teleport and attack your target 7 times over 3 seconds, and depending on which insight you're in, so say you're in Shallow Insight, you're not going to deal that much damage, but if you're in Deep Insight, this is where you do the big boy damage. Okay, you want to be in Deep Insight pretty much every time you pop Killing Spree. That's definitely the ideal optimal time to use it. Now let's go ahead and move on to stat priorities. Alright, so the main stat you want to focus on for combat spec and every other rogue spec is Mastery. Mastery is the master stat right now for rogues. After Mastery you want to have some haste, crit, and versatility. Now when you're gearing you want to have the PvP 4 set, and you also want to have the Versatility Mastery helmet. As far as enchants go, you want to get the Gift of Mastery enchant on your necklace, cape, and rings, and you also want to get the Mark of Bleeding Hollow enchants on your weapons. Now as far as PvP trinkets go, if you're human you want to run with the Wild Gladiator's Badge of Conquest and the Wild Gladiator's Insignia of Conquest, but if you don't play human you want to run with the Wild Gladiator's Insignia of Conquest and the Wild Gladiator's Medallion of Adaptation. And with that, let's move on to some openers and rotations. Well guys, that pretty much does it for this guide. If you have any additional questions, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll try my best to get back to you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.